It's time again for Talking Trade, sponsored by MMAC's World Trade Association and Michael Best Strategies.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of Talking Trade. My name is Ken Wasylik, Managing Director of EM Wasylik and Associates, an international business development company.
And I'm Sandi Siegel, President of MEJ. I am happy to welcome back our guest today, Mike Dankler. Mike's principal at Michael Best Strategies, office based in Washington, D.C. And previously, I know, Mike, you were with the U.S. House of Representatives. So you've really got your finger on the pulse of what's going on in Washington. I'm sure you're as happy as I am. The elections are over. So I'm really anxious to talk about some of the trade issues that are important to all of us here in trade. So let's talk about the China 301 duties. The U.S. Trade Rep just opened up a comment period to get feedback on the supposed effectiveness of those China tariffs and the additional duties. And the comment period gives people the opportunity to speak and argue for changes in those duties, potentially get relief from those duties on particular products. What will it actually take to see some action in that regard? And what do you think we might see from that comment period?
Yeah, I think that's the thanks. First of all, thanks for having me back. It's great to talk to you all again. But I think that's the billion-dollar question at this point is this is a statutorily mandated 4-year review of the tariffs. So they had to do this. They didn't really have a choice. But the question is what they choose to do with the comments. Obviously, I think there's a lot of people hoping that they may use it to rebalance things somehow, maybe use it as a pretext to reopen an exclusion process. But I think it's, as we've been telling clients, there's an old political adage that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So, we've been encouraging everybody to apply to comment, because if you don't, then they may take that as a sign that it's not important to you. But we're watching it. It just opened up yesterday, and we're hoping it may be a sign of some tariff liftings to come.
Terrific.
Well, another hot topic is we had our election last week. We see that even some of the results are not in yet. The Senate probably is going to still remain on the Democratic side, and the House is going to have a very thin majority to the Republicans. What do you see in the next lame duck session? The next, what can the Democrats do between now until the new Congress? And then how about the next 2 years after that?
Yeah, it is a very, it's going to be a very busy couple of month and a half coming up here. So in the trade world, I think everything that is in the realm of possibility will likely get folded into what we call an omnibus spending bill, because government funding does run out in mid-December. And so, when that being one of the last trains out of the station before the end of the Congress, everybody tries to ride along. And so there've been system of preferences ever since they lapsed at the end of 2020. And so we're still waiting for those negotiations to come to some agreement. And then at the same time, a lot of trade provisions that are authorized by Congress tend to have a ride or die. And so MTB has GSP, another program that just lapsed, Trade Adjustment Assistance, TAA, always rides along with Trade Promotion Authority, TPA. And so, we just have a lot of programs that are out there, and they're trying to come to some. I think Senator Rob Portman of Ohio called it a grand bargain to get all those done. But at the same time, with so many other things on the menu, government funding, tax provisions, health provisions, tax, health, and trade all fall under the same committee. So, they have a lot on their plates, and so we're hoping that we can see some sort of agreement come together, that those programs can get reauthorized. And it's going to be remaining to be seen, because we are still trying to figure out a lot of those election results. It seems like things are about. I think Decision Desk finally said that Republicans will take the House, so that's crystallizing some things. But at the same time, it's certainly putting a lag on the negotiations that might otherwise be happening. The other thing that we're watching very closely, and I think everybody is right now, is the potential for a rail strike. So we have 3 unions that have rejected that deal. Congress does have the ability to step in and end that if there is a strike. I think the next date is December 4th. And then we're getting the results from the 2 biggest rail unions, I think, over this coming weekend. So that's another thing that Congress may have to do if it comes down to a rail strike. But I think those are the 2 big things on the menu for the lame duck. Looking ahead to next year, we have, on the House side, Republicans, obviously, like I said, are projected to take the House, and the Ways and Means Committee has the chairmanship up for grabs between 3 different people: Jason Smith of Missouri, Vern Buchanan of Florida, and Adrian Smith of Nebraska. All of them are likely to chart a kind of a free trader type of path on trade policy. They've all kind of made statements about we need trade promotion authority again. We need more trade agreements. They'll also have some oversight abilities on USTR, on perhaps Section 301 tariffs, exclusions, things like that. And so, but in divided government, ultimately, expectations for legislation to get across the finish line is probably a little lower. But, oversight and at least bringing some of those issues to the fore, I think you'll see a lot of that.
I had originally, been reading that there was hopes that GSP and the MTB would pass through, during the lame duck, and now it's looking, I think, as you explained, it's being attached to other bills and less likely to happen before the end of the year. So, but obviously, as you also mentioned, the rail strike is huge, and that's certainly going to need attention, and that dramatic effect on my industry. So a big concern on adding to supply chain and so forth. So is there a sense, are some of these trade negotiations, looked at in relation to inflation and giving, consumer price relief and so forth? And is it getting attention, from that perspective and getting the ears of the right people in that regards?
I think in terms of the trade agreements, what we've seen, and I guess this will be a theme for Republicans potentially in the next Congress too, and it's already been for Republicans and Democrats. A lot of the agreements that the Biden administration has undertaken thus far, like the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework and the counterpart for the Americas, which I remember the acronym APEP, but not what it all stands for. But those are less about market access. They're less about lowering tariffs. They're more about creating rules for the road. And so that's actually got Congress quite frustrated, because that when you don't do anything with tariffs, when you're just kind of creating some rules, then that cuts Congress out of the whole thing. They don't have to pass it. They can conduct some oversight. They can pound the table, but ultimately the Biden administration could enter into it. So I think that will be another theme. But yeah, in terms of, I think lowering tariffs is where you'd see some of that, perhaps inflation reduction. But without that, then it's less of a theme, and it's more, you see Congress trying to add that in. Sure. But that obviously also would perhaps slow down some of those negotiations too.
Absolutely. I certainly, some of our trade agreements are based on trying to strengthen relationships with allies in our fight against China, and some of our concerns with, Chinese trade practices. As we wrap up, Mike, we're running out of time. Other comments and things to keep an eye on, negotiations, trade bills, and so forth that we should all be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think next year, another thing to watch is just that relationship with our allies. I think there's a lot of things that are coming to a head between the U.S. and Mexico on agriculture, on auto rules of origin, on energy policy. The U.S. and the EU, the Inflation Reduction Act, electric vehicle tax credit has really upset a lot of countries as well. So I think we could be heading into a little bit of a turbulent year. Some people are using the word trade war, and I don't think we need to, or term trade war. I don't think we need to go that far, but it's going to test the resolve of some of those relationships that the Biden administration prioritized in its first 2 years. So we'll see how that all shakes out, but it could be interesting.
Well, Mike, it's interesting. I was just recently spoke at a conference sponsored by the Illinois Strict Export Council, the Illinois DEC, and they're talking about friend shoring,
Yes.
not reshoring, friend shoring. And we had two representatives, one from Korea and one from Colombia, and they were just talking about, the sourcing, the China alternative to China and other countries. Do it with the countries that you have a free trade agreement with already.
Exactly. Yep. I think that's a buzzword we're going to be seeing a lot more of in the next couple of years.
Very interesting. Mike, thanks for joining us again. Always great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks, Mike.
Thanks for joining Talking Trade.
You've been listening to Talking Trade, sponsored by MMAC's World Trade Association and Michael Best